Okay, let's unpack this. When we think about police work, our minds often jump straight to the headlines, right? High-speed chases, dangerous confrontations.
Yeah, or those really tragic scenes, critical incidents.
Exactly. And look, those moments are undeniably intense, they're impactful. But our deep dive today, looking at some really fascinating new research, it reveals that what's really chipping away at officer well-being might be, well, a lot more subtle
hmm
and maybe, honestly, far more within our control to actually change.
It's almost like, you see a building with storm damage,
Yeah.
but you don't notice the invisible cracks in the foundation that were there all along. And maybe that's the bigger issue.
That's a great metaphor, because what's so fascinating here is how this study really forces us to shift our perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. For so long, research and public understanding too, it's largely centered on that acute trauma officer's face. Obvious stuff.
Right, the PTSD focus.
Precisely. But this new work, it builds a really compelling argument that a lot of significant psychological harm often stems from other things.
Hmm.
Less obvious, maybe, but incredibly pervasive operational and organizational factors.
Hmm.
And it makes you ask, what if the biggest challenges aren't the ones we see flashing on the evening news? What if they're the ones kind of quietly eroding the system from the inside?
Exactly. So today we're going beyond that surface level idea of police stress. Our mission really is to pull back the curtain and explore what the authors of this study call the hidden architecture of psychological harm in policing.
That's a great phrase.
Isn't it? And to do that, we're leaning heavily on a really compelling and timely study from 2025. It's by Jacqueline M. Drew and Harley Williamson, published in Police Quarterly.
And this isn't just, someone's opinion, which is so important for a critical topic like this.
Absolutely.
This research uses robust survey data. We're talking a really large sample, 1,763 Australian police officers, to be exact.
Wow, that's significant.
It is. And what's particularly valuable, I think, are these strength metrics they derived, using some pretty sophisticated statistical analysis.
Okay, what do those tell us?
Well, they don't just show if something like a type of stress is related to an outcome like distress. They show how much influence it has.
Ah, so it's about the weight, the impact.
Exactly. Which gives leaders a clear, data-driven priority list. Where should we invest our efforts to get the biggest positive change?
And for you, listening, our goal today is really to give you a shortcut to understanding why, despite what many of us just assume, the daily grind and the organizational environment might actually be more detrimental to officers' mental health than those big, dramatic, critical incidents. By the end of this, you'll have, hopefully, a much more nuanced and, frankly, a truly well-informed perspective on what's a super critical issue. For police, yes, but also for the communities they serve.
Indeed. Because when we talk about police welfare, it isn't just about the individuals in uniform, is it?
Oh.
It's intrinsically linked to the health of our communities, the effectiveness of our public safety systems. A psychologically healthy police force is just. It's a more effective and responsive one. Simple as that.
Okay, so let's start where most people's minds go. Trauma. Critical incidents.
The obvious starting point.
Right. It's undeniable that police work often means facing things that are genuinely dangerous, deeply distressing, frankly, horrific sometimes.
Absolutely.
We're talking direct threats with weapons, seeing severe injuries or fatalities at an accident scene, responding to really gruesome crime scenes, or dealing with the tragic realities of child abuse cases. These are the visceral things.
They are, and they capture our attention for good reason. The source material really highlights this officer's experience both a greater quantity and a higher frequency of trauma and critical incidents compared to employees in almost any other job.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine another profession with that level of constant exposure.
It's truly a defining feature, often unavoidable. And studies have shown, significant percentages, sometimes as high as 1 in 7 police personnel, can meet the criteria for diagnoses like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Which we all know is triggered by highly traumatic experiences.
Right, or major depression. And these conditions are often directly linked, quite clearly, to these specific traumatic events.
And it makes total sense why that's been the focus for so long. You hear numbers like 1 in 7, or you hear about the frequency. I mean, the study notes many officers start encountering these things in their first year of service.
Yeah.
And the yearly exposure rates can range from, 4 46% to a staggering 92%.
Yeah, it's a huge range, but consistently high.
So it's easy to assume the psychological toll must be mainly from those intense moments. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a constant, severe part of their job landscape.
And here's where this new study really adds nuance and challenges that singular focus. While it's absolutely essential to understand and address the impact of trauma, the research points out that focusing only on trauma and critical incidents is, well, limiting.
Why limiting?
Because these events are, for the most part, non-modifiable demands of the job. They're inherent. They're part of what police officers are called upon to do. You can't really eliminate them from policing.
Right. So if trauma is largely unavoidable, then the things we do about it are often reactive. Is that the idea?
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Interventions tend to focus on preparing officers to face these events, like resilience training, which is important,
Sure.
or providing support after they happen, like post-incident counseling or debriefing.
Which are definitely necessary.
Undeniably.
Uh-huh.
But they aren't preventative in the truest sense, are they? They don't eliminate the source of the harm.
It's like you said, putting on a stronger helmet after you've already had a few knocks. It helps manage the impact, but doesn't stop the knocks from coming.
Precisely. So if we genuinely want to move towards primary prevention, identifying and actively reducing the factors that cause harm before they impact health.
Then we need to look elsewhere.
Exactly. We need to look beyond just the unavoidable parts of the job. And this is where the study makes its biggest contribution, I think, by bringing in other types of stressors. Stressors that are very much within the control of police agencies and their leaders.
Okay.
And that's where the real leverage for change actually lies.
So that brings us to what the study calls operational stress. Now, this isn't the sudden shock of trauma, but it sounds like it's still about the actual doing of the job, the day-to-day reality.
That's right. Operational stress, in Drew and Williamson's definition anyway, it captures those pervasive challenges tied to the daily execution of police duties.
Okay, like what specifically?
Think about the relentless cumulative impact of fatigue, from constant shift work, mandatory overtime.
Working insane hours after a major incident.
Exactly. Working 16 hours straight, maybe getting a few hours sleep, and then being right back on patrol. Imagine the constant struggle just to maintain some kind of work-life balance when your schedule is so unpredictable. It interferes with family, personal life.
Yeah, missing kids' birthdays, anniversaries.
All of that.
Yeah.
Or even, the study mentions, the persistent negative comments officers might get from the public. That can really erode morale over time.
Okay. So it's not the single catastrophic event, but more like the relentless wear and tear, the ongoing, sometimes smaller stressors that just grind you down day after day.
You've got it. Like the mountain of paperwork after every single call.
Oh, yeah, the bureaucracy.
Or the frustrations of navigating the court system, which they specifically group under operational stress, too.
Yeah.
It's that daily friction, the grit in the gears of the daily machine, rather than one sudden breakdown.
That makes sense.
These aren't necessarily life-threatening things in the moment, but their consistent presence just chips away. The study also mentions physical demands pushing officers to their limits. Challenges managing a social life.
Just finding time to eat properly or exercise.
Right. Amidst the chaos.
Yes.
It's all part of that relentless operational grind, a constant drain on physical and mental reserves.
Which totally tracks. Being perpetually exhausted, feeling cut off from your personal life, or battling frustrating admin every day. That absolutely takes a profound toll. Even without a single critical incident, it creates this baseline of stress that's always kind of simmering under the surface. But then there's a third category in the study, and this one seems maybe even more insidious because it comes from within the organization itself, organizational stress.
This is, I think, perhaps the most revealing category, and crucially the most actionable one for leaders.
Okay.
Organizational stress relates directly to the internal environment of the police agency. The stressors stem from the police culture, management practices, the bureaucratic structure officers work within.
And these are things the organization can control.
Almost entirely, yes.
Yeah.
These are factors largely within the control of leadership and the organization itself.
So what kind of things fall under this umbrella? We're talking about bad bosses.
That can be part of it, yeah. Things like inconsistent leadership styles, maybe where directives change constantly, or where leaders seem to focus only on minor mistakes or complaints.
Instead of acknowledging good work.
Exactly. The study also points to the feeling that different rules apply to different people. Classic favoritism. Or the chronic, pervasive problem of staff shortages. That puts immense pressure on everyone who's left.
Right. Doing the work of 2 or 3 people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Other things include excessive admin duties, paperwork that pulls officers away from actual policing,
Yeah.
bureaucratic red tape that just hinders getting things done efficiently.
The lack of resources, like bad equipment.
Yep. Inadequate equipment that might compromise safety or just make the job harder.
Right.
Or maybe not getting proper training on new equipment or procedures.
Constant policy changes.
Constant, often poorly communicated, changes in policy or even legislation that just create confusion and frustration. All these things together, they create an environment that feels unfair, inefficient, maybe unsupported. And that directly hits officer morale and mental health. Often, the research suggests, much more deeply than an external danger might.
It's like being asked to fight a fire,
Yeah.
but your own department hands you a leaky bucket and a hose full of holes. The frustration must be immense.
That's a great analogy. And it highlights how the internal system itself can become a primary source of harm. Maybe even more so than the external dangers inherent in the job.
Which sounds like something that could exist in lots of big workplaces, right? Not just policing. Though maybe the stakes feel higher in policing.
That's a really crucial point. And it does echo across different demanding professions. While police work has its unique operational bits, these organizational stressors, they're kind of universal, aren't they?
Yeah, they sound familiar.
Though they have their own specific flavor within policing, of course.
Yep.
But research comparing trauma and organizational stress, say in other emergency services, often finds the same thing. These broader occupational stressors, especially the organizational ones, are often the dominant causes of poor psychological outcomes.
Even for things like PTSD, which we automatically link to trauma.
Even for PTSD, yeah. The overall work environment, particularly that organizational climate, seems to have a really powerful mediating effect. It's not just what happens to you, but where it happens, and crucially, how your organization supports you or doesn't support you through it.
Okay, so let's really get into the nitty-gritty of this Drew and Williamson study then. They surveyed, you said, over 1,700 Australian officers, a big group.
1,763 sworn officers, yeah. A very robust data set.
And importantly, they weren't just looking at diagnosable mental health conditions like PTSD or depression, which a lot of previous research focused on.
That's correct. Earlier work often did focus on specific diagnoses. Drew and Williamson broadened the scope quite a bit, looking at more general but still critically important measures of psychological health.
Like what?
They look at psychological distress, which covers feelings like nervousness, agitation, fatigue, feeling low or depressed. Kind of a general measure of feeling unwell mentally.
Okay, a broader spectrum.
Yes. And they also looked at burnout, which the World Health Organization now defines as this syndrome from chronic workplace stress, characterized by feeling exhausted, cynical, or detached from your job, and feeling less effective professionally.
That's a really smart approach because it captures more than just clinical illness, right? It gets at that wider range of well-being or lack thereof, paints a more complete picture of the daily toll.
Exactly. And they wanted to provide those actionable strength metrics we talked about to help leaders prioritize.
Right. So when they put all these different types of stress, the trauma, the operational grind, the organizational issues, into their statistical models, what did they actually find? How do they stack up against each other in terms of impact?
Well, the findings were quite stark, particularly when comparing the different stressors side by side.
Okay.
For psychological distress, first off, all three types of stress trauma, operational and organizational, did show significant direct relationships. So they all contribute something to distress. That wasn't a huge surprise.
Right, that makes sense. They're all stressful.
But the strength of those relationships was dramatically different. And this is really the core revelation.
Okay, here we go. This is where it gets really interesting and honestly kind of paradigm shifting, isn't it?
It really is. The study found that compared to trauma stress, organizational stress was a staggering 3 times stronger in predicting psychological distress. 3 times stronger. And operational stress, that daily grind stuff, was 2.5 times stronger than trauma stress in predicting psychological distress.
So the stuff inside the organization, the bureaucracy, the leadership, the culture, that's 3 times more impactful on general distress than facing danger or seeing horrific things.
According to this data, yes. And the day-to-day operational hassles, the fatigue, the paperwork, the work-life balance issues 2.5 times more impactful than trauma. It fundamentally shifts how we should be thinking about this, completely flips the conventional wisdom on its head.
It absolutely does. So if an officer is feeling distressed, agitated, fatigued, the factors coming from the organization itself, or just the relentless operational demands, are far more likely to be the main drivers.
Far more influential, yes.
Yeah.
3 times more for organizational, 2.5 for operational compared to trauma. And what's also really notable for psychological distress, organizational stress was even stronger than operational stress, about 1.3 times stronger.
So the internal culture and leadership seem to be the most dominant force overall for general distress.
That's what this data strongly suggests, that hidden architecture is having a profoundly stronger impact on overall psychological distress than those highly visible traumatic events we usually fixate on.
Wow. Okay. But what about burnout? That's slightly different, right? That slow burn, feeling exhausted, cynical, ineffective, leads to people leaving the force or just checking out. What did the study find there?
This is where the results get even more surprising, maybe even shocking for some people.
Okay.
For burnout, the study found no direct relationship between trauma stress and burnout.
None at all.
Zero direct relationship. Instead, the impact that trauma did have on burnout was fully explained by organizational and operational stress.
Hang on, wait, let me get this straight. So experiencing trauma itself wasn't directly causing burnout in these officers?
Not directly, no.
It was the effect of the day-to-day operational issues and the organizational culture acting as mediators. Is that right?
You've got it exactly. That is a huge revelation.
It's massive. It suggests the trauma might be like a trigger or it makes someone vulnerable, but it's the system's response or lack of response or just the presence of all these other daily and organizational burdens that ultimately pushes someone into burnout.
That's what the mediation effect indicates, yes. The link between trauma and burnout seems to be entirely channeled through the level of organizational and operational stress the officers reported.
So it's like the trauma might light the fuse.
Yeah, a good way to put it.
But it's the toxic work environment, the relentless operational demands, the lack of support. That's the actual fuel that leads to the explosion of burnout.
Precisely. When officers experience trauma, it seems it's the added burden of an unsupportive, inefficient, or dysfunctional operational and organizational environment that really tips them over the edge into burnout, not just the trauma itself in isolation.
Trauma's the spark. Operational and organizational stress are the tinder and fuel.
Excellent analogy. And just to add, for burnout specifically, operational stress actually showed a slightly stronger direct relationship than organizational stress, almost 1.5 times stronger, highlighting the sheer crushing weight of those daily practical demands in leading to that specific kind of exhaustion and cynicism.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then, thinking about solutions. If we genuinely want to support police officers, build a healthy, resilient force, this research gives leaders a clear, undeniable mandate, doesn't it? Look inward.
Absolutely. Look inside the organization.
It's not just about, training officers to be tough enough for the horrors they might see. It's about fundamentally reshaping the daily realities of their jobs and the culture they exist in every single day.
It shifts the focus quite dramatically from primarily individual coping mechanisms.
Right, just be more resilient.
Towards systemic responsibility. What is the organization doing or not doing? So what does this really mean for how we think about leadership and responsibility here?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, this study isn't just about policing, is it? It feels like a powerful reminder for almost any workplace.
I think so too, especially demanding ones.
Yeah.
It shows how the structures, the culture, the management practices, they can have a profound impact on well-being, sometimes even more so than the inherent challenges of the actual work itself.
Yeah.
It really prompts us to think critically, in any high-stakes profession, about where the true leverage for positive change lies. It highlights that psychological injuries aren't always just an unavoidable part of the job. Often, maybe even usually, they're consequences, at least in significant measure, of how the job is managed and the environment it's performed in.
So let's recap the core finding here, the real aha moment from this deep dive. While critical incidents, trauma, they're undeniably part of policing.
Can't ignore them.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But this study by Drew and Williamson found organizational stress was 3 times stronger and operational stress 2.5 times stronger than trauma stress when it comes to predicting overall psychological distress.
Huge numbers.
And even more strikingly, for burnout, the impact of trauma basically disappeared as a direct cause. It was fully explained by the operational and organizational stress. meaning these internal controllable factors are the primary drivers of that profound exhaustion and cynicism.
And this completely reframes the whole conversation around police welfare, doesn't
Oh,
it?
totally.
It moves the focus away from only emphasizing individual resilience against unavoidable trauma,
Yeah.
important but not the whole story,
Right.
towards understanding and actively addressing the systemic factors that police agencies, their leaders, can and absolutely must address.
Yeah. It means leaders have way more direct influence over their officers' psychological health than perhaps they or we previously understood.
Exactly. It's not just about providing ambulances at the bottom of the cliff. It's about building fences at the top, preventing the injury in the first place.
So the practical implications here are just enormous. This study basically hands police leaders a data-driven roadmap for primary prevention, doesn't it?
It really does. A clear mandate.
Tackle the stressors you can control, actively reduce the bureaucratic nonsense, establish consistent and genuinely supportive leadership, proactively deal with chronic staff shortages, better manage the fatigue from shifts and overtime.
These aren't just nice-to-haves anymore. They're statistically proven levers for real change in officer well-being.
And the benefits go beyond just officer health, right?
Oh, absolutely. Implementing these kinds of workplace reforms, it won't just lead to improved health, less distress, less burnout. It can also dramatically improve staff retention. People are less likely to leave a supportive environment.
Makes sense.
It can improve job performance. Officers who are less exhausted and cynical are likely to be more engaged and effective. And, crucially, it helps agencies meet their legal duties, their occupational health and safety responsibilities.
So it's about creating healthier, more effective workplaces from the ground up, recognizing that the well-being of the officer is totally foundational to how well the whole public safety system works.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So our deep dive today really shows us that supporting those who protect us isn't just about training them for the battlefield, as it were. It's maybe even more about reforming the environment they return to every single day after facing those challenges. Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe for you listening. What unseen organizational or operational stressors might be impacting your profession, whatever it is, and what power do leaders really have to change them?